Okay, I think we're going to go ahead and get started. Welcome to the riteSCAN webinar on stock takes and new hardware trends. Thanks for joining us. My name is Sue Pagachnik, and I'm the marketing manager here at RightSoft, and I'm going to help out with moderating today's session. We have two speakers. First, we have Ryan Winnicky. He's one of our software implementation and support specialists, and he's going to be talking about the true cost of manual inventories and help you get a deeper understanding of how riteSCAN can streamline stock takes and increase accuracy. And then we have Will Barnett from one of our leading hardware partners, MCAT, and he's going to talk about the latest hardware trends and hardware options available. During the webinar, you can feel free to submit your questions via the chat function, and we will review those questions at the end of the presentation and open things up. If you have any technical issues, you can use the chat window to let us know. But without any further ado, I'm going to turn the presentation over to Ryan, and he's going to help you be a stock take hero with riteSCAN.
All right, thanks a lot, Sue. I appreciate the introductions there. So let's get started and really dive into this presentation. So while on average, inventory accounts for about 15% of US public firms' assets, there are a number of costs that often go overlooked when it comes to this inventory management side of things. Errors is one of the largest ones that goes overlooked, and manual data entry often results in incorrect inventory information. On average, humans make one error for every 300 characters. So if you think about that process and how often that's taking place, it can really lead to errors within your inventory. And this inaccurate inventory levels are leading to unnecessary reorders, potential stock takes or stock outs, and other things within your inventory as well. Another drawback is the amount of time that it takes to enter this data manually and the time in lag that it takes to be able to access that data and information in your ERP system. This is ultimately costing your company time and money with those manual processes. Inventory inaccuracies will really bloat your inventory levels and increase the warehouse space requirements. And this is what ties up capital and impacts your customers' ability to innovate or grow their business in today's increasingly competitive global marketplace. One of the other things that often goes overlooked is customer and employee satisfaction. The inaccuracies inherent in manual inventory can really lead out to stockouts, mispicks, and things like that. That's going to cause unhappy customers and as well frustrate your employees because they're unable to do anything about it. In today's labor market, hanging on to good employees is very critical. And at the end of the day, all these issues impact your customers' bottom line. So using a simple warehouse management software with barcode technology can help eliminate mistakes, prevent these mispicks, and help streamline the stock take process for your operators as well. Oh, okay. So with that, the other thing, let's talk about being a stock take hero. Help your clients implement riteSCAN for stock takes and overall inventory management. So we're going to take a look from a high level what that stock take process looks like with riteSCAN. The first step in the process is going to be setting up that stock take or cycle count in the SysPro system. Then riteSCAN really allows the ability for employees to go out into the warehouse and capture that stock take data, feeding it directly back into SysPro. Once all the counts are complete, they can review and accept in SysPro, and the adjustments can be made as necessary as well. So let's go ahead and really start with the SysPro stock take selection to begin the process of actually setting up our stock take or cycle count in the ERP system. Once you do that, you're going to be able to select the parameters for which inventory you are planning to count, whether it's a full warehouse or it's a specific bin location, or if you're looking to count a specific stock code within your operations as well. Once you've defined all of those parameters, you're able to print that count ticket and take the next steps in the process for stock take. So after you've set up those stock take parameters and printed out your list of items to go count, you're going to want to disperse that out to your team. One of the other things you're going to want to do is also train your team on the correct counting processes. Often stock take discrepancies may stem from basic miscounts or selecting the incorrect unit of measures. or counting the incorrect stock codes. However, with the use of riteSCAN, it helps prevent some of these errors through scanning barcodes and really providing visibility to the operator during their count processes as well. So with riteSCAN, you can go from very labor-intensive, inaccurate manual counts and data entry to quick barcode scans that capture your physical count data and send that information to SysPro immediately. riteSCAN makes it very easy to perform these physical counts. To begin, launch riteSCAN on your device and enter your username and password. Once you do that, you're able to start the cycle count by selecting the stock take icon on the handheld device that you'll notice in the left corner of the screen there. To perform the actual physical count, what the operator is going to do is they're going to scan the warehouse. Then they can scan the bin location as well as the stock code that they're planning to count. So they'll get all this information through scans, which is going to validate what they're doing for that stock take specifically. Then they can go ahead and perform the actual count process and count all the different items for that stock code that they're working on. Once they're done with that, they can enter in the quantity. And notice on the right there, you're going to see a little unit of measure box next to quantity, and that allows the operator to select the unit of measure that they're counting in. Often this is going to be using their inventory default unit of measure, and you can lock that down on your operators per basis so that they don't have the ability to change that as well. If your items are lot traceable, the operator is also going to scan in the lot number that's associated with the stock code. If you use serial numbers, the user will be prompted to scan in the serial numbers that they're counting as well. So it's always going through that validation process of capturing all the data that's required to be sent back to SysPro. So the other thing I like to talk about is the reference field at the bottom. You'll notice that that reference field is defaulted, and you can set up and configure your riteSCAN system to default that with what I prefer typically is riteSCAN and then the username. And what that allows you to do is you have one step further of visibility in SysPro to see specifically who performed what transaction, and that way you're ensured to know that it happened within riteSCAN as well. So after you've counted and scanned all of the required information, the operator is going to select post and send that count data directly into SysPro. So once they do that, they're also going to be notified with a post successful message to notify the operator that they counted all those correct items and it was all sent into SysPro, and they can move on to the next stock code that they're wanting to count. So notice when you click post, the stock take data is sent directly into SysPro immediately through the E.net business objects, and that's what really provides us that seamless integration into SysPro system. This means you don't have to wait for data to be manually entered into SysPro anymore. The data is captured at the same time of the transaction, which is going to ultimately result in a more efficient and accurate stock take process. There doesn't have to be an extra person sitting around and manually entering the data that the warehouse workers counted into the SysPro system. That often leads to many bottlenecks within the process as well, unable to getting that done efficiently. So once all of the operators have completed the count process, the supervisor or warehouse manager, whoever's managing the stock take, has the ability to view the progress of the stock take results in SysPro for all the transactions that have been processed through riteSCAN. So upon reviewing those results, the supervisor can evaluate and resolve discrepancies, whether it's sending the warehouse workers back into the warehouse to find missing product or figure out where a mistake may have happened within their counts. But if everything looks good as expected, what they can do is also accept that stock take, which will make the adjustments to inventory with the updated inventory counts that came into the SysPro system that you view in that report as well. So let's talk about some of the common reasons for why we run into some of these stock take discrepancies, and you'll start to realize how riteSCAN can help eliminate some of these as well. One of the biggest ones is miscounts. So this discrepancy could be the result of a simple miscount or just not understanding how many boxes we're counting. We all understand that they're manually having to go through that process. They may have accidentally counted a box twice or something like that. So that often can lead to discrepancies as well. The unit of measure is a big one that we actually have control over resolving. So perhaps the wrong unit of measure was used in the count process. They were counting in eaches instead of cartons or things like that. You want to make sure that all of the people that are involved in the physical count are actually trained in your count procedures and your different warehouse unit of measures that you're counting in as well. Mistaken identity, this is an issue where an item could have been mistaken for a similar product. So counting staff may not realize that the same product in a different color or size is technically a different product in your warehouse. So that's where riteSCAN and barcoding things can really help prevent those errors in your operations, because now you're not relying on the eye of the user or the counter to make sure that they're counting the correct product. They're actually having to physically scan that barcode and verify that they're correctly counting the items. Receiving is one that typically happens upstream before you actually know that the errors are going to be in your warehouse. Stock could have been received into inventory incorrectly, where they recorded it as 100 when really only 10 were received into inventory. And you don't realize those mistakes until you get downstream and actually perform that count process. So a lot of times those aren't things that you can resolve unless you have a solution in place within that receiving process to validate those things as they're coming in your door as well. Labeling is one that's not as common of an issue, but it can lead to issues in your stock as well, depending on your distributors and things like that. It's possible that stock items are mislabeled with the wrong barcodes or the wrong stock code labels and things like that. So that can be an issue within your discrepancies of inventory as well. Put away is a fairly common one that people will run into. So if a large number of items are missing, you may want to check to see if they were put away in the wrong warehouse or bin location, because you don't always know where those items are being moved to. We try to put processes in place that standardize where things are going within our warehouse, but those parameters are not always followed. So you'll always want to check to make sure that you can track down that inventory. Also, you may want to check to see if some sales orders have not been accounted for, that somebody staged some of the materials in a certain area of your warehouse that were unaccounted for in that actual stock take process as well. Stock take loss is one of the unavoidable ones. Just ultimate stock loss is one of those things we realize that this happens without always being able to track down the exact cause of our mysterious disappearing inventory. It's something that customers face quite often, and it's one of the things that we really want to get to the bottom of, but it is a common thing in our operations. So in terms of preventing a lot of these errors that we just talked about, riteSCAN has made many enhancements to really improve our product's accuracy and efficiency, even one step further than just the typical barcode within your operations as well. If you're not familiar with SmartScan, this was a feature that was added to riteSCAN that allows companies to utilize barcodes that contain multiple pieces of data within single barcodes. So what riteSCAN does is this allows the operator to scan a single barcode, and riteSCAN will automatically map and apply the data to the correct fields within riteSCAN, no matter what module you're in. And it allows the operator to really save time in that scanning process, making it much more accurate because it's automatically putting the correct data into the correct fields and validating that against our system. However, as we talk about SmartScan, a lot of times people have the questions regarding 1D and 2D barcodes and how that works with riteSCAN. Will, I know you're kind of an expert in the 1D and 2D barcode space and have a lot of recommendations. Can you talk about the difference between 1D and 2D barcodes, as well as some of the benefits to moving towards a 2D barcode?
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, it's a common misconception that 2D is primarily just for longer data strings or for more data, which of course that is one of the key functions, is that it does contain more data than a 1D barcode. But 2D barcodes actually have a number of different advantages beyond just that, especially in environments where you may not even need the extra data capacity. So SmartScan, of course, leverages the fact that it can contain way more data, but some of the other advantages, there's really kind of, I guess, four beyond the more data aspect, but one would be scan distance. So for a similar physically sized barcode, a 2D barcode will actually scan a little bit further. So that's one benefit, as well as being square and not being so long. So if you think about like a long distance location that some of your customers may be using, some of those where we're seeing 35, 40, 50 feet away that they need to scan a hanging tag or high racking. In situations like that, you may see a 1D barcode that's somewhere around 12 to 14 inches long to be able to hit that accuracy. Here with a 2D code, you're looking at something more of the size of a balled up fist. So a little smaller and compact. So especially in places where you maybe have multiple bin locations on a pallet shelf, it helps to shrink that down a little bit, but still maintain that distance. Another one would be speed. It does scan a little faster inherently because you're using a 2D barcode scanner, which every 2D barcode scanner will scan 1D and 2D barcodes. So you're kind of future-proofing yourself if you're planning ahead and trying to buy a 2D unit. Beyond the speed, it is better at scanning damaged barcodes. So if your suppliers are providing you some of the barcodes or you're printing the labels yourselves and things are getting rubbed around, maybe things are getting bumped and scratched, the labels will actually scan better because of some of the check digits and the way that its architecture is created. It actually does a better job scanning. And what we hear from users most often is, hey, now I don't have to line my red line up with the barcode. You can scan it from multi-angles because it's essentially a rapid camera. So you don't need to line it up perfectly and level it and get it parallel to be able to, or sorry, perpendicular to get it to read correctly. You can just fire away with that. So there's some other benefits outside of just the data that if you have any customers moving to the SmartScan or considering that, there's other things that are also going to be advantageous to consider.
Perfect. Thanks a lot, Will. That's helpful to know, not just the SmartScan side of things, but how it's really going to future-proof you and help your customers get one step ahead of the game to what the new technology is and things like that. So talking about SmartScan, riteSCAN can really help your customers achieve greater inventory accuracy through this data validation process that takes place throughout riteSCAN modules, but also specifically within the stock take process. The data validation really begins with the use of barcodes throughout your warehouse, just like we talked about, whether it's 1D or 2D barcodes on all of your products. That's where it really begins. Barcodes is what's going to help validate those stock codes, those locations, the lot numbers, the serial numbers, and much more to really improve your operators' counting and improve your operators' picking performance and accuracy. So these are some of the validations that you'll see on screen here to really help prevent errors before they're able to get downstream and cause even larger issues within your inventory processes that take so much to really scavenger hunt and try to find the cause of. So we're wanting to prevent those as soon as we can within the process. So the first one we're going to take a look at here is validating that the operator is performing a count for the correct warehouse and bin location. So what they're going to do is they have to require that information ahead of time to put in the warehouse and bin location. If I don't have that stock take selection set up in the system, it's not going to allow the operator to accidentally try to capture information for it. It's not going to let them proceed until they put in the correct information, ultimately preventing the error before they can go on to the next steps in the process. Through the use of barcoding inventory, it also allows for the scanner to perform the detection between stock codes that may be very similar parts or numbers. So imagine trying to read a small stock code number on a part, which the part number only differentiates by one digit. Because they're simply different colors or different sizes. So trying to differentiate an A10001 versus an A1011 is very difficult for the operator to do manually. And riteSCAN now will do the detection process for you and prevent the operator from counting the wrong stock code. It's going to warn them if they scan the wrong stock code ahead of time that's not within that stock take. and also give them that information at their fingertips so they can go through that process effectively without making mistakes ahead of time. The other real benefit, which it really drives people into a riteSCAN product, is what if my inventory is lot traceable? Can you imagine trying to go and decipher all the different lot numbers on your inventory and your products and report that information back to SysPro manually, and then having to have somebody re-keyboard that information into the system, which is prone to errors as well. So with riteSCAN, it really helps prevent those errors. So when a stock code is lot traceable, it's going to require the operator to make sure that they put in that lot information. It's not going to let them proceed without putting that information in there. And then it's going to also validate those lot numbers. And you can set up settings within your system whether you want them to be able to create a new lot number if it doesn't find it in inventory, or you can also set it so that it doesn't allow them to do it, so that they have to prevent or fix that error ahead of time before it just goes into the SysPro system as well. So it's always keeping an eye out for those errors and really making sure that we're ensuring an accurate count process as we're going through the warehouse and counting all of these different products. So riteSCAN also offers a number of settings that are able to match your customers' stock take processes as well as their preferences. You can set up a variety of settings in riteSCAN, whether it's for all of your operators or if you want to differentiate it for specific operators as well. Maybe you want a supervisor or a lead to have different settings than the typical counter that's out on the warehouse floor, and you can set those settings within riteSCAN. If you're using tickets in your stock take process, you can utilize and set up the system that way. Or if you're only capturing based on a stock code, you can configure riteSCAN to really match whatever sort of processes you may have had in place previously with your manual processes to really manage the change for your employees and your customers that you're working with as well. You're also able to configure your system to the increase or replace capture methods for your counting processes. So you may be using one or the other today. You can really fit riteSCAN settings to fit whatever you have in place today. Or if you need to change those processes, it's not a challenge to go through and change those settings and match the processes that you want to move to. There are also a number of other settings that really just allow you to streamline your stock take process to fit your business needs as well as your operations and the operators that are out there counting. So you can set those permission levels however you'd like to. So I like to talk about a case study. This is one of our great customers that really sees the benefit out of the stock take process with riteSCAN. Magilite is a company actually based out of Massachusetts, and the company manufactures and distributes high performance materials for upholstery, wall coverings, fashion accessories, footwear, things like that. They employ over 140 people and actually operate in a 165,000 square foot manufacturing facility. Each year, what their biggest challenge was, Magilite does a massive annual inventory that requires double the staff just to conduct this, and it takes a considerable time and effort out of their operations that they have to be down for. So because riteSCAN is so easy to use and it can be trained very quickly, Magilite actually purchases double their temporary riteSCAN licenses for the sole purpose of this stock take each year. They hire 20 temporary workers to help come in and do their annual inventory using riteSCAN. So they train those temporary workers how to use riteSCAN very quickly to perform their stock takes. This also allows them to get more people on the floor at the same time in this count process, which is going to ultimately shorten their annual inventory and reduce their downtime, which is the issues that they had. They moved from manual processes that were very time consuming to a much more streamlined inventory process with riteSCAN that they're able to move to as well. So with that being said, it's not just about the stock or the software that's going to help with these processes. It's also about the hardware that allows you the mobility out in the warehouse to go ahead and capture this data. And we have Will with us, as mentioned earlier, from MCAT, and he's going to give you a brief description on the hardware and the different trends going on right now.
Thank you, Ryan. So it's a big world right now, and there's a whole lot of questions about what is the future of this environment. Lots of questions around consumer devices, lots of questions around next steps with Android, what happens with Windows. And so I want to address a lot of those for everybody today and talk about what is really popular right now, what are a lot of our customers in multiple different verticals asking for, what's hot and what's drawing a lot of attention, and what's ultimately helping close opportunity. What are those value add pieces here? MCAT, we've been partnered with RiteSoft now for, oh boy, a number of years. We've probably worked with a fair bit of you on the call here today, and we've been around ourselves about 15 years now or so. We are top tier partners in the industry with Zebra and Honeywell and Panasonic, all the big names, and so we want to discuss these industry trends, talk about what does our future hold in the rugged space and various hardware options going forward here. So as far as industry trends right now, SOTI is a huge hot topic. I've probably mentioned it to a few of you. Mobile device management as a platform is what everybody's looking for these days. And what mobile device management is it's a client that's usually hosted in the cloud or on-premise for a customer, and they're able to physically see what's going on their devices, as many devices as you have, from a single pane of glass. And so what we see is a lot of IT staff are able to monitor all of their equipment across the enterprise, including laptops and tablets and rugged devices for the warehouse and thermal printers and all sorts of equipment. They're able to see everything in a single pane of glass and see what's going on their users' devices in real time. On top of that, where it's really effective for these users is to be able to push out updates remotely. So if any of you have clients that have multiple sites, this is where it becomes extremely valuable. I'm not sure if anybody's ever experienced it, but someone's got a device that's having an issue at one site, IT staff is at another site, you've got to ship or drive or however you get that device back over, or have somebody cradle it at a different location, and then it's this whole spider web of connectivity trying to make this work. With a mobile device management platform like SOTI, you simply log in from anywhere in the world, because it's an online portal, and you can see all of your devices and you can see exactly what's going on. You can restart that device remotely. You can text the user and say, hey, perform this function real quick, or you can send updates. Let's say there's a newer riteSCAN version that you want to push out to all of your equipment. You no longer need to get every device back in your hands and cradle it and drag those files over. You simply drag and drop into a directory online, and it gets updated whenever you want it to get updated. So that's a really exciting thing that's connecting and allowing the IT staff or anybody that wants to have access to that way more effective control over what's going on and saving a whole lot of time. Another one is print automation. A big brand for this is Nice Label. We see this a lot in mobile printers, as well as automating certain steps of the process. So if there's pieces, let's say at receiving, where you're scanning something in and then you're needing to go print labels out to label those products before they end up on your shelves or to help with put away, we can automate those processes. So when a function that happens within riteSCAN, a label automatically spits out on the other end without having you to tell it to print or to go find the printer. And so this is where we're seeing a lot of interest in mobile printers, hip-worn printers mounted to forklifts, things like that, to, again, extend that mobility. And a big one that everybody's asking about is Android. What is going on with Android? What does our future look like from an operating system perspective? Android is now on more than half of the devices that ship from Honeywell and Zebra. And they are shipping with either a dual OS, which would have Android or Windows as an option, or Android-only options. There's actually a number of devices from the major manufacturers that only ship with Android these days. So Android is the future that we're looking to. Windows hasn't come to the table with a real offering as of yet, and so Android is what we're looking at in the next number of years as it comes. We still are supporting Windows Mobile and CE platforms for many of your users on the Motorola Symbol platform or the Intermec equipments. Absolutely, those will be supported for the next number of years. However, we are going to see a sunset on Windows CE and Windows Mobile over the next few years. And so we want everybody to be thinking in real time about what happens in a few years from now and how do we plan for that future. You know, a lot of the new equipment these days are are going to be much stronger, they're going to be faster, much longer battery life, much longer scan distances, more capable overall. And one of the biggest selling features on new equipment these days is on that Android and Windows platform. Most of those Windows devices that we're seeing, what you're seeing in your client's hands, the Motorola MC92NO or CK75 now, they ship with Windows today or Android, and you can convert it from Windows to Android in the future whenever you're ready. So that's future-proofing the customer for the next 6, 10 years, however long they plan on using this equipment. So that's really exciting stuff to be thinking about as we're deploying new devices, new deployments going forward here. Another big topic on this, another trend has been hardware as a service option. And this is really critical for helping to close those opportunities where initial cost shock is there. They see the price of the hardware on top of the software, and they may say, that's a lot for my capital expense to push through. We may need to stagger this. We may need to split this up, slow this down, what have you. So what we do is we offer the idea to move outside of a CapEx. Think about an operating expense. And we can do hardware as a service options where we're swapping the equipment for the customer every 3 to 5 years, and they continue to pay a monthly fee, or we do financing options for these as well. So there's more and more people in the industry looking to this now, moving away from that capital expense and just rolling it into a simply monthly payment. We have some customers that are now looking at a few $100s a month essentially for some of these deployments versus the upfront larger sticker shock that can happen. So moving from that, of course, there are some popular hardware options that are out there. We're going to talk a little bit about new versus recertified. The recommended devices right now for our customers are going to be the MC92NO platform, which is the Zebra platform, and the CK75, which is the Intermec Honeywell platform. So as a quick history lesson, I'm sure many of you know, maybe all of you do, but Zebra purchased Motorola and Symbol as a brand, I guess a couple of years ago now, and Honeywell purchased Intermec. So when we talk about Zebra and Honeywell, they include those subsets. Zebra still does their printers, but now they have all the mobile computers from Motorola and Symbol. Honeywell does all of their individual items as well as Intermec and Datamax printers. So they have that whole portfolio. Again, faster devices than previous years. 2D barcodes are becoming, or 2D barcode scan engines are becoming standard on these. 70-foot distance we're now seeing as an effective scan range qualified by Zebra on the new 92NO. If you select the right scan engine, it can scan 70 feet as well as up close. So for customers that are looking to really be future-proofed, thinking ahead about Android and preparing for what may come down the line, a lot of our users now are purchasing the 92NO that has the capability of swapping from Windows to Android in the future, and they have the 2D barcode scanner that does up close to 70-foot scans, basically effectively curing any sort of problem that may come up in the future for the next 6 to 10 years. Outside of that, we think that value still exists on the recertified platform, though we wouldn't necessarily recommend this going forward. The devices that are going to be recertified are going to be a bit slower, and noticeably when compared to their new versions. They're not going to be as powerful. They generally will take a little longer to repair. And with the sunset of CE and Windows Mobile over the next few years, we're really going to see them kind of as an obsolete platform. So while new deployments, we may not suggest this equipment, we understand that it is a value option, and it's certainly acceptable for your customers that are currently using them, that need more devices, that are comfortable with the platform, or are looking for something inexpensive to get started and understand that they may need to move off of that in a reasonable amount of time. We do get some questions about the 9190, the middle device between a 9090 and a 92NO. I hope I'm not getting too technical here, but I just want to answer many of the questions that I received. There was not many of the 9190s deployed, so while they are capable to be sourced in a recertified platform, their price point tends to push people to just buy a new device. The 9090 continues to drop in price, and we have hundreds of them in stock pretty much at all times. So it's very easy to deploy those out quickly. I wanted to touch on one of Ryan's examples before, though, with Magilite, which is a very important thing to bring up. In those peak season where they may bring on temporary employees, you may get licensing from riteSCAN to expand your portfolio of workers. We do offer rentals on this equipment, this recertified equipment. So they don't necessarily have to buy that hardware to be able to expand during those peak seasons. They can simply rent it for a number of weeks or a month or whatever it takes. Even I've had some people rent it for a day, and we'll ship them as many devices as they need. So please know that that is absolutely an option during those peak season times. We do offer all the cradles and accessories and recertified options too. Just remember with the 9090 specifically, in respect to 2D barcode scanning, the 9090 is pretty much limited to 1D. So if you have customers that are interested in SmartScan and they think that might be a platform that they want to implement in the future, we should really steer them away from the 9090 as a viable platform because of its limited ability to use just 1D. I think outside of that, that pretty much wraps up kind of the updates and what's going on in our industry right now.
Thank you very much, Will.
Thank you, Ryan.
Yeah, thank you. And with that being said, one of the things that we want to ensure with our customers is when they're purchasing a warehouse automation system, they also want to be investing in the future. And with riteSCAN, they're definitely doing just that. If we look over the past year, some of the enhancements that we made to riteSCAN, the last year basically has been pallet tracking. We've added freight apportionment, auto increment scanning. We're constantly making enhancements to SmartScan, as well as we've added the receipt from inspection module, and we're continuously making more and more enhancements that are put into our standard product. However, with what Will talked about, we also want to talk about what's next on our roadmap. We are currently in the process of planning and developing an Android-compatible version of riteSCAN with an updated user interface that sticks to the core competencies of simple and streamlined experience for our users. We understand that the market trends are changing with the hardware demands and things like that, and riteSCAN wants to stay ahead of the curve and stay with that to provide our customers a changing platform that's going to meet the needs of the market as well. So with help, we want to be able to help meet the needs of our customers with these shifts in the marketplace to really provide the best platform from a whole perspective, from hardware to software to the environment that they're using it in. And moving towards those rugged Android devices is something that we've realized is something to come in the future, and we're currently in the process of getting towards that as well. So with that being said, we're going to open it up for questions at this time, and I believe Sue will be moderating that.
Okay. Well, this first question is for you. You mentioned the sunset dates for CE and Windows Mobile, and the question is, can customers still use the devices that they have after they have been sunset?
Yes, that's a great question. So 2018 to 2021, we're going to see some more comments about this. The devices will still work. They'll essentially be frozen in time in terms of updates. Microsoft is no longer going to provide any support at all for that platform as these come end of support. And so what you'll see is a device that won't stop working. It's simply that you will not be able to update the firmware. You'll not be able to apply patches or fixes. If there's any bugs or things that work their way out, we're essentially kind of left in the wind with what we can do to fix that. So if a user is currently using a 9090 or a 9190 or even a 92NO with Windows Mobile today, and let's say in 2020 or 2021, their system is no longer supported, it doesn't mean the device is just going to stop, turn off and stop working. It's just there will be no more support and no more changes. So as issues come up, it's going to be increasingly harder to fix them. And we know from experience from dealing with this before, because of course there's always turnover on operating systems, it can be a very uncomfortable space and there ends up being a lot of frustration over that. So we encourage people to really try to think ahead. And again, that's why we try to encourage new devices. We try to encourage options for affording those new devices. And it's okay to buy it with a Windows platform today as long as it's got the flexibility of being Android in the future.
Okay, good. The next question I have here relates to the operating system. How much does it cost to swap out the operating system, let's say in the future?
Yeah, so we can do that as of, we could do it right now, and it's usually somewhere, depending on if you go with Intermec or Honeywell or Zebra, it's usually somewhere around $100 to $150. I think the Zebra one is $135, and if I recall, the Intermec one's about the same. But yeah, they tend to fall in that range per device, and so you pay it once, you send the devices in, they get swapped over. And so usually what customers are doing is they're sending one in at a time and just kind of keeping a revolving door of getting them swapped over. Or if you have a hard cutover date, we can help expedite that process for you as well.
Okay, this next question is for Ryan. Ryan, does riteSCAN adjust inventory when it posts to CISPRO during a stock take?
That's a really good question. And no, it doesn't necessarily adjust inventory when it posts. So what riteSCAN's really doing from the stock take process is it's just feeding that data to be reported on and analyzed from a CISPRO perspective. So it's just putting it into the system. It's not making any adjustments to inventory at that time. It still requires somebody to go into CISPRO and run that variance report to accept or fix errors ahead of time before accepting the inventory adjustments, but that actually takes place in CISPRO. riteSCAN just feeds the data there.
Okay. This next question is also for you, Ryan. How does riteSCAN handle multiple units of measure for inventory during the actual stock take?
So with the multiple units of measure, CISPRO allows you to set up all of your defaults, and riteSCAN uses all of that information. We're connected very tightly with CISPRO, so it's always using that default unit of measure. However, you still have access to the alternate unit of measures if those are set up on a stock code as well. A lot of times this does bring up a concern for some people. They want to lock that information down in riteSCAN and not allow the operator to change the unit of measure they're counting in. And you can also do that within the riteSCAN system as well, because typically most people are going to use that default stocking unit of measure to perform that count process with riteSCAN.
Okay, this next question here, and I think this will be our last question. We're almost out of time, but it's for Will. Does MCAT preload riteSCAN on the handheld devices that a customer orders?
Yes, so we will, in almost every situation, what we want to do is we want to preload riteSCAN, the current version that the customer would be using, as well as all the wireless settings. A lot of customers that purchase devices think that it's kind of like a cell phone. You can just log right onto it, like logging onto your own Wi-Fi at home on your tablet or your phone, but it's actually a little bit more complicated than that. And there's a lot of settings and custom configurations we have to do to make that work effectively with everybody's different wireless networks. It is a different approach. So we will actually load riteSCAN, we load all the wireless settings, we lock down the device. If they choose to do mobile device management, we'll load SODI, we'll get all that set up. And the hope is that, and generally how it's executed is that it arrives and they open the box and they log in. Of course, there can be things that arise from that, and that's why we want to be here to help with any sort of issues and see it to the end through a successful deployment.
Okay, do you do that then, even if the customer is just renting the device?
Absolutely. So we actually will still load all of that as part of our service. So that way, again, when it shows up, they can start using it right away.
Excellent. All right. It looks like we are basically out of time. We want to thank everyone for joining us today. We will be sending out the recording of today's webinar to you so that you can pass it along to a colleague or listen to it again. Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone.